Hello there, everybody. We're going to be starting off with week 2 core. Specifically, we're going to be focusing on customizing our character. To begin with, we're going to click on our player sprite and we're going to click on our costume. As you can see here, we already have a couple of costumes already set up for us. Starting from the first one, we have their idle pose, which is just when they're standing still, they're just looking straight at us. And then the rest of the costume is specifically the eye, is looking at exactly where you are when you click a certain key. So obviously when you click the jump button, the eye is up. When you click the left and right button, the eyes are looking in each of those directions. And then the last two are just focusing on when you're clicking both of those keys at the same time, like up and left or up and right. So to begin with, to start customizing, we have a couple of options that we can do. Starting off, we can use our select tool. And we can go ahead and start just clicking around the different shapes and then using our fill tool to change the color. Or to make this a little bit quicker, we can just use our paint bucket tool. We can go ahead and pick the color that we want, playing around with the saturation and brightness as well. Once we have the color that we are looking for, we can just go ahead and start clicking on the different shapes that makes up our player. Okay, as I'm doing this, it's always good to kind of start thinking about your theme and how you can customize your character to kind of help emphasize that theme a little bit more. So now that I am wrapping up with this, the next color that I'm going to start thinking about is going to be the eye color. So I'm going to go a little bit opposite. I'm going to use a yellow. Okay, maybe even lighten it a little bit. Okay, and this is always a good thing to kind of see how best to pick your colors to make sure you're able to see your player. So now I'm just going to go through and change the eye color. Okay, now that I have that, I can even fill in the inner eye. Okay. So now that I picked the colors for my character, I can use the brush tool to start drawing add-ons to my actual player. But there is a couple of rules. So starting off, try to be careful not to add too much stuff outside of the player. So you can add a little bit of stuff on top, maybe a hat or a little bit of hair, but I would be very careful adding stuff to the sides and a little bit of the bottom as well. Only because when you're actually playing the game and going through your platforms, it's very easy for example, if you added hands or hair to get caught on platforms or accidentally touch something that's not supposed to, and it can make the game just a tad bit hard. So try your best to either put it as close as possible to the player, so not having stuff kind of floating around, or just adding just a little couple things at the top. You can do whatever you want to the inside that won't affect it, but the outside will to some extent. So I can go ahead and click on my brush tool, and I can lower my brush size. So I tend to play with the size depending on what I want to do. If I'm trying to create stuff with big shapes, then I'll use the brush size number to be a little bit higher so I can quickly draw it. If I'm doing stuff that requires little details like I am right now, because I'm going to be doing some eyelashes, maybe some freckles, then I would want the brush size to be just a tad bit small, just so that I'm able to get into those nooks and crannies and draw what I want. So I'm going to go ahead, start drawing some eyelashes, and maybe I'll add freckles here. Another thing that I can do, like I said, for my player is maybe add some hair, so I'll probably change the color of that. I'll give him a little mohawk. So I'm going to just fill that in, and I'm going to move this to the back just so it looks a little bit better. Can even add a mouth if I want to. And then I'll maybe even add some sharp teeth. Okay. So now that I have my player, if I don't want to add anything else, really the sky's the limit. I can also play around with the reshape tool if I want to. For example, maybe add some arms to it, as long as it's a little bit close to it. Or maybe even add a tail if I wanted to. Maybe I'll even, to kind of push it a little bit more, I can add maybe like a horn or something. Since I'm going to be making a monster, so let me just do that. Fill that in. Copy, paste, and I'm just going to flip that around. Okay, and there we go. Kind of have my little monster that now I have for my actual player. So now you guys have two options for this. If you want, you can go ahead and draw the same things on here, and you can make it a little bit different for each of them. That way, when it's time to animate, when you're moving them around, it kind of acts like a little bit of an animation because, for example, maybe if I'm jumping up, I'll make the eyelashes a little bit smaller, or maybe change the horns a little bit. That's if you want to kind of add a little bit something extra while you're also going through and customizing your player. But for those of you who maybe want to keep everything about the same, what you can do is you can use your select tool, and when you click on one item, you can copy and paste it on each of them, and it will copy and paste exactly in the correct position. But instead of doing it to each and every one of these pieces, what we can do is if we hold on shift while we're clicking on it, it starts expanding the amount of stuff that it's actually able to hold. So I'm going to click on my eyelashes, and I'm only specifically clicking on the stuff that I added to my character. So I'm not touching the body, I'm not touching their eyes, I'm just trying to touch on the mouth, the eyelashes, the freckles, the horns, the hair, stuff that I actually added to my character that the rest of the pieces don't have. Once I've selected everything, I'll copy it, and then when I go into my next costume, I can paste, and there I have all my other pieces here, so I can just go through and start pasting it. And there we go. So have fun playing around, trying to create your own character. Remember, again, those simple rules of just making sure that if you're adding stuff, just make sure you're adding it a little bit to the top, that it's not too far away. And remember that later on, you're going to be able to play test your game. So if you're noticing that it makes it a little bit hard to maneuver around, you might want to think of either shrinking it or changing a little bit of your character's design just to make your gameplay a little bit easier.